result and execution. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
John Wick Chapter 4 is the fourth installment in the John Wick action thriller series, released in 2023. It is directed and co-produced by Chad Stahelski and written by Shay Hatton and Michael Finch. Keanu Reeves reprises his role as John Wick, a legendary assassin trying to survive and break free from the deadly criminal organization known as the High Table. The film also stars Donnie Yen, Bill Skarsgård, Lawrence Fishburne, Hiroyuki Sanada, Shamir Anderson, Lance Reddick, Rina Sawayama, Scott Adkins, Clancy Brown, and Ian McShane. With a runtime of 169 minutes, it is the longest movie in the franchise. The story continues directly from the previous films, with John Wick still hunted by the High Table. Determined to end their control over him, he embarks on a dangerous journey across multiple international locations including Paris, Berlin, New York, and Japan. Along the way, he encounters new adversaries and allies. Kane, a blind assassin played by Donnie Yen, is forced to hunt Wick but later becomes a reluctant ally. Bill Skarsgård portrays Marquis Vincent de Graymont, a high-ranking and ruthless member of the High Table who becomes one of Wick's main opponents. Returning characters such as the Bowery King, Winston, and Sharon continue to support or challenge Wick, their loyalties shifting throughout the story. The film is known for its highly choreographed action sequences, which include gunfights, martial arts, sword fights, vehicular chases, and large-scale set pieces. Each fight is carefully designed to be visually clear while maintaining intensity and suspense. The cinematography emphasizes a stylish neo-noir aesthetic, blending practical effects, real locations, and minimal CGI to create a grounded, immersive experience. The global settings of the film contribute to its epic feel, with each location offering unique challenges and opportunities for action sequences. John Wick Chapter 4 premiered in London on March 6, 2023, and was released in the United States on March 24, 2023. The film had been delayed several times due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It received overwhelmingly positive reviews from critics and audiences alike, praised for its action choreography, direction, cinematography, visual style, and performances, particularly Reeves' portrayal of John Wick. The film also became the highest-grossing installment in the franchise, earning approximately $447.3 million worldwide. Despite the action-heavy focus, the film explores the emotional and moral dimensions of Wick's character. He is driven not just by survival but by the desire to reclaim his freedom and resolve the debts and betrayals that have defined his life. The story emphasizes loyalty, vengeance, and the human cost of a life built on violence. The ending provides a dramatic and somewhat bittersweet resolution, leaving questions about Wick's ultimate fate and whether true freedom is attainable for someone so deeply entrenched in the assassin underworld. Overall, John Wick Chapter 4 expands the franchise with larger-scale action, deeper character dynamics, new international locations, and high stakes, solidifying John Wick's position as one of modern cinema's most enduring action heroes. The film opens with John Wick in the dimly lit, rain-slicked streets of New York City, emphasizing both his isolation and the omnipresent threat from the High Table. The filmmakers use muted color palettes, stark lighting contrasts, and long, lingering camera shots to communicate John's internal state. His physical injuries from Chapter 3 are not glossed over. Bloodied bandages, slowed movement, and brief moments of vulnerability create a palpable sense of danger. This is not a character invincible by plot convenience. Every movement is calculated, every misstep potentially fatal. Early on, John navigates through the derelict streets, using surveillance footage, coded messages, and his network of contacts to track High Table operatives. The ambient sound design, dripping water, distant sirens, faint murmurs, accentuates tension, making viewers feel every step as if they are stalking alongside him. John's first significant dialogue sequence occurs with the Bowery King. Lawrence Fishburne imbues the character with quiet intensity, portraying a man who has survived decades in the underworld by cultivating intelligence, influence, and loyalty. Their conversation is layered with subtext, John must weigh the risks of confronting the High Table versus continuing to hide. The Bowery King must determine whether supporting John aligns with his long-term strategy. These early scenes establish narrative stakes, foreshadowing future alliances, betrayals, and moral choices. They also reinforce the franchise's recurring theme: the world of assassins is structured by codes and networks, and survival depends as much on intellect and trust as on skill and firepower. The Moroccan sequences present the first major set piece. John arrives to confront the Elder, who is seated in an opulent yet austere palace setting. The production design emphasizes wealth, authority, and cultural authenticity, blending traditional Moroccan architecture with cinematic lighting to enhance suspense. The fight choreography is a sophisticated combination of gun-fu and hand-to-hand combat. Reeves performs precise strikes, tactical takedowns, and fluid weapon transitions, demonstrating a mastery that has been built across the previous films. The Elder's guards provide multiple layers of challenge. John uses spatial awareness, improvisation, and environmental cues to neutralize threats. Notably, the choreography incorporates narrow staircases, market stalls, and intricately patterned corridors, forcing John to adapt continuously. Each movement is framed to maintain visibility of spatial relationships, allowing viewers to appreciate strategy and skill simultaneously. The assassination of the Elder is a pivotal narrative moment. It not only removes a figure of authority but symbolically represents John's defiance against the hierarchical structure of the High Table. The sequence is punctuated by a brief moment of hesitation, where John reflects on the consequences of his actions. Cinematic techniques such as slow motion, tight close-ups of John's face, and contrasting wide shots of the palace halls emphasize the gravity of his decision. The moment balances action spectacle with narrative weight, setting the stage for the retaliatory escalation by Marquis Vincent de Gramont, who is introduced shortly afterward. The Marquis, portrayed by Bill Skarsgård, is depicted as methodical, unyielding, and dangerously intelligent. His first scenes show him observing maps, surveillance data, and reports from agents, establishing him as a meticulous strategist. Unlike previous antagonists, the Marquis operates from a position of near-total control, utilizing financial resources, personnel, and intelligence to manipulate events. This introduces a new narrative layer. John is no longer contending only with highly skilled individual assassins but with an organizational power capable of global coordination. Each confrontation, therefore, requires both tactical precision and strategic foresight, amplifying tension and narrative complexity. In Osaka, the film introduces Koji and Akira. The hotel's design contrasts serenity and danger, with traditional Japanese aesthetics, sliding shoji screens, tatami mats, minimalistic lighting, juxtaposed against sudden bursts of violence. Koji's moral and strategic depth provides a counterbalance to John's relentless pursuit. Akira's presence introduces stakes that are personal, humanizing John's journey by emphasizing collateral impact on innocents and allies. Donnie Yen's Kane adds complexity. His blindness forces innovative choreography where auditory perception, reflexive movement, and environmental awareness are emphasized. For example, in one hallway confrontation, Kane uses ambient sounds to anticipate attacks, counters with precise strikes, and manipulates shadows and obstacles to his advantage. These sequences are not only visually compelling but narratively rich, reflecting the character's adaptability and ingenuity. The Berlin sequences illustrate the interplay of negotiation and violence. John must gain support from the Ruska Roma, which requires assassinating Killa Harkan. The filmmakers utilize Berlin's urban geography to create layered combat arenas, stairwells, rooftops, and industrial spaces serve as battlegrounds. Choreography alternates between gunplay, melee combat, and environmental utilization. The filmmakers emphasize continuity, long takes, and practical effects to maintain realism. John's strategic thinking, feints, baiting opponents, and manipulating cover, is central, demonstrating that his survival depends as much on intellect as on physical prowess. The Paris duel at Sacré-Cœur serves as the narrative and thematic apex. Here, cinematography emphasizes scale and proximity, sweeping views of Paris juxtaposed with tight close-ups of John, Kane, and the Marquis. The duel follows a formalized structure, pistol exchanges at set distances with observers enforcing the code. Each round of the duel is laden with psychological tension, strategy, and symbolic meaning. John's decision to withhold a shot in the final round subverts expectations, highlighting restraint, ethical agency, and tactical brilliance. This choice reflects central themes: the interplay of morality, cunning, and survival in a morally ambiguous world. Supporting characters are integral to narrative and thematic richness. Winston Scott embodies the negotiation between personal loyalty and systemic obligation. The Bowery King illustrates the importance of alliances and networks. Mr. Nobody's shifting allegiances highlight the fluidity of morality in this universe. Akira and Kane emphasize human vulnerability, stakes beyond the protagonist, and narrative consequences. These characters ensure the world is multidimensional, emotionally resonant, and narratively cohesive. Production choices reinforce thematic and narrative aims. Reeves and the stunt team perform complex sequences in long takes, minimizing CGI reliance. Choreography is environment-specific, reflecting spatial realism and tactical authenticity. Fight sequences blend martial arts, firearms expertise, and improvisation, maintaining narrative clarity. Cinematography, long tracking shots, dynamic angles, and thoughtful framing, enhances tension and storytelling. Lighting, color grading, and sound design amplify emotional and narrative resonance. The musical score by Bates and Richard complements action and emotion, using electronic motifs for intensity and orchestral passages for reflection. Sound cues synchronize with choreography, enhancing rhythm, pacing, and audience immersion. Thematically, Chapter 4 emphasizes morality, consequence, loyalty, and personal versus systemic obligation. John Wick's personal code contrasts with high table enforcement, creating tension that drives narrative and ethical exploration. Locations, lighting, and choreography act as symbols. Confinement represents entrapment, open vistas symbolize freedom, combat sequences embody moral and strategic conflict. The ambiguous ending, John's apparent death and funeral, encourages reflection on legacy, consequence, and narrative continuity. Critical reception highlights narrative depth, choreography, cinematography, and character development. Box office success, $447.3 million worldwide, reflects both audience engagement and franchise endurance. Discussions of spin-offs, such as Ballerina, and further exploration of the high table universe indicate the film's cultural impact and narrative richness. The narrative's psychological and ethical layers, combined with technical mastery, create a cinematic experience that is both thrilling and reflective. Chapter 4 balances spectacle with narrative depth, physical skill with strategic intelligence, and action with moral inquiry. Its open-ended conclusion sustains engagement, ensuring continued discussion, speculation, and expansion within the universe. By combining globe-spanning action, deep character arcs, and meticulous production, John Wick Chapter 4 stands as a landmark in modern action cinema, extending the franchise's influence while providing a rich, immersive, and ethically complex narrative landscape. Following the opening confrontations and global setup, John Wick's journey in Chapter 4 rapidly escalates in both intensity and complexity. The narrative moves fluidly from Morocco to the streets of Paris, where the cinematic spectacle of the film is on full display. Paris is not simply a picturesque setting, it becomes an active participant in the storytelling. Narrow alleyways, historic staircases, and bustling city streets create both opportunities and obstacles for John as he evades a series of relentless pursuers sent by Marquis Vincent de Graymont and the High Table. Each chase sequence is meticulously choreographed, blending hand-to-hand combat, gunplay, and environmental interaction, reinforcing John's resourcefulness and tactical genius. The filmmakers employ a combination of practical stunts and cinematographic techniques to sustain clarity amidst chaos, allowing audiences to track the action without losing narrative coherence. These sequences also underscore the theme of inevitability. No matter where John flees, the consequences of his defiance follow, illustrating the inescapable reach of the High Table. In parallel with the physical confrontations, Chapter 4 deepens the exploration of John's psychological and emotional state. The trauma of previous conflicts, the relentless physical demands of his lifestyle, and the moral weight of his actions accumulate, creating a tension that is both visceral and intellectual. While John exhibits extraordinary skill and adaptability, he is not invincible, and the film emphasizes the cost of survival. Scenes where he sustains injuries, navigates ambushes, or contemplates his next move reflect a character who is constantly balancing strategy, ethics, and self-preservation. The inclusion of Caine adds a rich moral counterpoint. As a blind assassin coerced into pursuit, Caine mirrors John's skill but also represents the limits imposed by personal obligations and ethical constraints. Their encounters are choreographed to emphasize both physical intensity and psychological complexity, often revealing character through combat in addition to dialogue or exposition. One of the central narrative threads of Chapter 4 involves John's negotiation with the Ruska Roma syndicate. This plotline exemplifies the intricate social structures governing the High Table universe. In order to formally challenge Marquis in a duel, a confrontation that carries lethal stakes, John must obtain sponsorship from a legitimate High Table affiliated organization. This requirement forces him into morally ambiguous situations, such as the elimination of Killa Harkan, a figure whose death is politically necessary to regain standing with the Roma. These sequences highlight the franchise's unique integration of world-building into action. Narrative tension arises not merely from physical danger, but from adherence to the codes, rituals, and bureaucratic constraints of a shadowy, hyperstructured criminal society. John's ability to navigate these structures with intelligence, adaptability, and a measured understanding of consequence underscores his evolution from a purely reactive fighter to a strategic operator within the global network of assassination. Berlin serves as another pivotal narrative node, where John faces a series of carefully orchestrated ambushes. Each encounter is staged to test multiple dimensions of his skill: close-quarters combat, marksmanship, strategic thinking, and improvisation. The choreography, led by Stahelski and his stunt team, emphasizes fluidity, rhythm, and continuity. The film frequently employs long takes and wide framing to maintain spatial awareness, allowing viewers to appreciate the complexity of movement and interaction in confined or cluttered environments. These sequences are emblematic of the franchise's evolution. While early films emphasized tightly choreographed fight sequences in relatively static locations, Chapter 4 demonstrates a capacity to integrate complex action within dynamic, multi-level urban environments. These scenes also reinforce thematic motifs of isolation and inevitability. Even in bustling cities, surrounded by civilians and architectural constraints, John is relentlessly pursued, emphasizing the inescapability of the consequences of his past actions and the omnipresent reach of the High Table. The narrative tension is heightened by the interplay between John and Marquis. While Marquis commands extensive resources and intelligence, he is often overconfident, relying on the presumed inevitability of his victories rather than anticipating John's ingenuity. Their strategic battle of wits is manifested not only in direct confrontations but also in the orchestration of traps, contracts, and manipulations involving secondary characters. The duel between John and Marquis becomes a narrative fulcrum, with every prior action, alliance, and moral choice converging toward this climactic moment. John's preparations involve not only physical readiness but also psychological calibration, anticipating both the predictable and the unexpected behaviors of his opponent. Caine's role becomes increasingly pivotal during these middle sequences. The moral and emotional stakes he introduces are amplified through interactions with John, the High Table, and his own daughter. Scenes where he must choose between compliance with Marquis' demands and the safety of his child deepen the narrative complexity. The choreography in these sequences often intertwines physical confrontation with symbolic meaning. For example, hand-to-hand combat sequences in confined spaces, such as stairwells or small apartments, emphasize limitation, strategy, and precision, highlighting that skill alone is insufficient without situational awareness and moral clarity. Osaka, Japan, provides a further expansion of both action and narrative complexity. The local syndicate support, strategic advice, and combat assistance become instrumental in John's broader campaign against Marquis. The juxtaposition of serene, culturally rich landscapes with sudden, brutal action sequences underscores the franchise's ability to blend aesthetic beauty with visceral impact. Japanese architectural elements, narrow streets, and interior spaces are utilized not only as locations but as integral components of fight choreography. John's adaptability, ingenuity, and tactical foresight are on full display, reinforcing his status as a consummate assassin capable of navigating both physical and social complexities in foreign environments. Parallel to John's physical journey is an exploration of the psychological and philosophical dimensions of his character. Themes of loyalty, honor, and the cost of vengeance are interwoven with the action. John operates according to a personal code, balancing morality with survival in a world where conventional ethics are often meaningless. This moral code is juxtaposed against the high table's rigid hierarchy and punitive enforcement, highlighting the tension between individual agency and institutional authority. Marquis embodies institutional ruthlessness and strategic manipulation, whereas John represents skill, ingenuity, and a complex but internally consistent ethical framework. These thematic contrasts enhance the narrative depth, ensuring that the film's high-octane action is accompanied by compelling intellectual and emotional resonance. The film also expands upon the narrative importance of alliances and social networks within the assassin world. Characters such as Winston, the Bowery King, Shimazu Koji, and other supporting figures provide not merely tactical assistance but also insight into the functioning, politics, and cultural nuances of the high-table ecosystem. The interactions among these characters are nuanced, combining dialogue, subtle visual cues, and choreographed movement to convey power dynamics, trust, and betrayal. John's ability to navigate these relationships, exploit weaknesses, and maintain strategic advantage is central to both his survival and narrative progression. The middle sequences of the film also emphasize the cost of action and consequence. John sustains multiple injuries, engages in prolonged battles, and witnesses the deaths and betrayals of both allies and adversaries. Each confrontation, whether minor or climactic, reinforces the cumulative weight of his lifestyle. The film does not shy away from depicting physical tolls, fatigue, and psychological strain, adding a layer of realism and gravity to the otherwise hyper-stylized action. This attention to consequence differentiates John Wick from conventional action franchises, grounding its narrative in both visceral and emotional stakes. The pacing in this segment of the film is deliberate yet relentless. Narrative beats, action sequences, and character interactions are structured to maintain continuous tension, ensuring that audiences remain engaged while also deepening understanding of the underlying world and its rules. Cinematic techniques such as cross-cutting, long takes, slow motion, and dynamic camera movement are utilized to heighten drama, emphasize key tactical maneuvers, and provide visual clarity in complex sequences. Sound design and music further complement these choices, accentuating both emotional intensity and physical impact. By the midpoint of the film, the narrative converges toward preparation for the climactic duel. John's strategy, alliances, and accumulated experience are all directed toward this confrontation. The challenges he faces, both physical and political, illustrate the escalating stakes of his journey. Each prior encounter, ambush, and moral choice contributes to the tension and complexity of the impending duel, establishing a narrative arc that seamlessly blends action, emotion, and thematic resonance. The audience witnesses not only a series of spectacular action set pieces but also a carefully constructed moral and strategic progression, culminating in a confrontation that is as intellectually engaging as it is physically thrilling. The movie opens in the rain-soaked streets of New York City, immediately immersing the audience in the shadowed, neo-noir world that has become synonymous with the John Wick franchise. John Wick, excommunicated and hunted by the entire assassin network, moves with precision through the narrow alleys, each step calculated and deliberate. His coat is soaked, his weapons carefully holstered, and his eyes scanning constantly for threats. The camera follows him in tight tracking shots, emphasizing his isolation while establishing the environment as a character in itself, the glistening wet pavements reflecting neon lights, creating a tense, almost claustrophobic atmosphere. He pauses briefly to reload his pistols, his hands moving with the methodical grace of a master. Even in these moments of quiet, the tension is palpable, the viewer is acutely aware that at any instant, death could arrive from any direction. As John navigates the city, he makes his way to an abandoned warehouse, which serves as a temporary safe house. Here, he contacts an old associate for intelligence on Marquis Vincent de Graymont, the emerging antagonist. The film begins layering its narrative threads, emphasizing the stakes. De Graymont has consolidated power within the High Table and is intent on eradicating John. The scene balances exposition with tension, showing that John's challenges are both physical and strategic. Even a simple interaction becomes fraught with danger, as informants in this world are often double agents or assassins in disguise. The first major set piece begins as John travels to Paris, where intelligence points to a gathering of de Graymont's operatives in a high-end nightclub. The sequence opens with a wide establishing shot of the club's exterior, juxtaposing the opulence of the setting against the violence about to unfold. Inside, the camera moves fluidly between groups of dancing patrons and armed assassins, building tension as John navigates the crowd. He spots his targets across the dance floor, their eyes scanning for threats, weapons subtly visible beneath clothing. The combat begins subtly with a single confrontation in the VIP section. John draws his pistols, firing with controlled precision while simultaneously engaging in hand-to-hand combat. The choreography is layered. John disarms one opponent with a swift twist of the wrist while ducking a counterattack from another, seamlessly moving into a spinning kick that propels a third adversary into a glass partition. The camera occasionally switches to slow motion to emphasize the physicality and danger of each maneuver, highlighting John's agility and efficiency. Environmental interaction is key. He uses tables, chairs, and railings to leverage his movements, turning the surroundings into weapons. At the same time, Akira appears from an upper balcony, descending rapidly with a katana. She engages John briefly, testing his skill and reflexes, moving with a fluidity that mirrors his own. Their duel is choreographed to suggest mutual respect yet inherent danger, neither fully allies nor fully enemies. John blocks a vertical strike with his forearm while twisting to deliver a precise elbow strike to Akira's midsection. She rolls back and slashes with the edge of the blade, grazing his shoulder, which emphasizes that even small injuries have consequences in this world. The fight escalates when a wave of additional assassins enters, forcing John to transition seamlessly between firearms and melee. He fires his pistols in controlled bursts while pivoting to strike with a knife, disarming opponents and using ricochets creatively. Bullets shatter mirrors and glass bottles, creating chaos that John navigates with uncanny awareness. At one point, he uses a hanging chandelier as leverage to swing over a railing, simultaneously kicking two attackers into a lower level while landing a spinning kick on a third. Each movement is choreographed to maintain clarity while conveying brutal realism. The scene concludes with John exiting the nightclub as reinforcements arrive, including Akira, who retreats with a knowing glance. This sequence establishes the tone for the film: relentless action, strategic intelligence, and layered character interactions. John's journey is not merely about survival, it is about anticipating and countering threats from every direction, using both intellect and physical skill. Following the explosive events of Chapter 3, Parabellum, John Wick finds himself in a precarious position, declared excommunicado, and with an enormous bounty on his head. The story opens with Wick still recovering from the relentless pursuit of assassins, hiding in safe houses and relying on whatever network of allies remains loyal to him. Despite the high stakes, the opening scenes make it clear that Wick is no longer content to reactively survive. He is determined to confront the power structures that have dictated his violent life. The narrative quickly establishes the central conflict. Wick aims to dismantle the High Table, the shadowy organization that enforces its own brutal code of conduct across the global criminal underworld. As the story progresses, Wick learns of a potential path to strike directly at the High Table's leadership. This revelation sets the stage for the film's globe-spanning journey, beginning in New York City, where Wick gathers intelligence and resources. He reconnects with familiar faces such as the Bowery King, who continues to provide clandestine support, offering logistical assistance and access to vital networks. Sharon, the concierge of the Continental Hotel, assists in navigating neutral territories and safe havens, ensuring that Wick can move with some degree of safety through a hostile world. These early sequences emphasize the delicate balance between trust and betrayal that defines Wick's existence. Every interaction carries the possibility of lethal consequences. Wick's mission takes him to Paris, where he infiltrates a heavily fortified location to confront the High Table's enforcers. This sequence is emblematic of the film's signature action style, combining gunplay, martial arts, and environmental interaction in a tightly choreographed series of confrontations. The cinematography emphasizes fluid movement and dynamic spatial awareness, allowing the audience to follow Wick's calculated maneuvers in real time. Each fight serves not merely as spectacle but also as a narrative device, demonstrating Wick's tactical acumen, resilience, and the psychological burden of a life devoted to violence. During his mission, Wick encounters Kane, portrayed by Donnie Yen, a blind assassin whose skills and personal code present both a challenge and an uneasy alliance. Kane's introduction adds a layer of complexity to the narrative, as he oscillates between adversary and reluctant collaborator. Their interactions explore themes of honor, vengeance, and the ethics of survival, providing moments of dialogue and confrontation that deepen the story beyond the purely physical. The pairing of Wick and Kane allows for a combination of martial arts choreography and character-driven tension, enriching the film's action with emotional stakes. Meanwhile, the High Table is represented by Marquis Vincent de Graymont, played by Bill Skarsgård, who orchestrates strategic moves against Wick while maintaining an air of sophisticated menace. The Marquis embodies the organization's ruthless efficiency and serves as the intellectual and psychological foil to Wick's direct, action-oriented approach. De Graymont manipulates events from the shadows, arranging ambushes, sending assassins, and testing Wick's limits, creating a multi-layered narrative tension that propels the story forward. The Marquis' presence elevates the narrative stakes, as his machinations force Wick into situations that test both his physical abilities and moral judgment. As the story unfolds, Wick travels to Berlin, Japan, and other locations, each presenting unique challenges and introducing new adversaries. Hiroyuki Sanada's character, Shimazu Koji, engages Wick in a duel that tests his combat versatility, blending traditional martial arts with the franchise's stylized gun-fu aesthetic. Rina Sawayama's Akira, a blade-wielding assassin, offers a visually striking and lethal challenge that demonstrates the evolution of the series' action choreography. Each location is carefully designed to reflect both aesthetic beauty and strategic complexity, providing a canvas for Wick's ingenuity and relentless determination. Throughout these sequences, Wick is forced to confront betrayals, shifting alliances, and the cumulative psychological toll of his life. The narrative emphasizes that violence, while necessary for survival in his world, carries lasting consequences. Personal connections are fragile, trust is scarce, and every victory is tinged with loss. The film's pacing alternates between intense action and quieter, reflective moments, allowing the audience to engage with Wick's internal struggles. These interludes provide context for his relentless drive and frame the action within a moral and emotional landscape. The climax of the film centers on a high-stakes duel orchestrated by the Marquis, representing the culmination of Wick's confrontation with the High Table. This sequence combines all elements of the franchise's signature style, precise choreography, environmental awareness, and escalating tension. Wick must navigate a battlefield filled with adversaries while executing a strategy that leverages both his experience and ingenuity. The duel is as much psychological as it is physical, testing Wick's ability to anticipate, adapt, and endure. The choreography is meticulously designed to maintain clarity and intensity, with camera work and editing that highlight the stakes of each move. Interwoven with the action are themes of loyalty, honor, and the search for freedom. Wick's relationships with allies such as the Bowery King and Kane underscore the cost of a life of violence and the importance of strategic alliances. Encounters with enemies, both new and familiar, challenge Wick's understanding of justice and vengeance, emphasizing that survival is never simply about physical skill but also about navigating the moral complexities of a world defined by unyielding codes. These narrative threads elevate the film above mere spectacle, providing depth and resonance that distinguish it within the action genre. The resolution, while climactic, leaves certain narrative threads open, allowing for speculation about Wick's future and the continuing evolution of the franchise. Without revealing all details, the ending reflects both the personal cost of Wick's journey and the ongoing consequences of confronting entrenched power structures. It is simultaneously satisfying in its dramatic conclusion and provocative in the questions it raises about morality, consequence, and survival. This narrative choice has sparked discussion among audiences, with debates about Wick's ultimate fate and the implications for the broader cinematic universe. In conclusion, the plot of John Wick Chapter 4 is an intricate tapestry of action, strategy, and character development. Each location, character interaction, and fight sequence serves to advance the story while maintaining thematic coherence. Wick's journey is both external and internal, encompassing not only his struggle against the High Table but also his ongoing negotiation with his own moral code and the consequences of his violent past. The film successfully balances adrenaline-fueled spectacle with narrative depth, offering audiences a cinematic experience that is both thrilling and emotionally resonant. By expanding the scope of the series and deepening its exploration of character and world building, Chapter 4 solidifies John Wick's place as one of contemporary action cinema's most compelling and enduring figures. John Wick Chapter 4 begins in the aftermath of the previous film, with John Wick on the run and targeted by the High Table, the powerful global organization of assassins and crime lords. With a massive bounty on his head, Wick's life is under constant threat. He is determined to find a way to end the High Table's control over him and secure his freedom, but the path forward is treacherous. His journey takes him to multiple international locations, each presenting unique challenges, cultural aesthetics, and enemies. From the neon-lit streets of Japan, the historic architecture of Paris, the urban sprawl of Berlin, to the gritty avenues of New York, every city is a battleground where Wick's skills, cunning, and endurance are tested. Early in the film, John finds himself ambushed by several assassins, including elite operatives sent by the High Table. The action is relentless, combining hand-to-hand combat, gunfights, and environmental interactions. Wick uses everything in his surroundings as a weapon, from staircases to furniture, demonstrating a mix of martial arts and gun fu that has become his signature. One of the most visually striking sequences occurs in Paris, where Wick engages in a high-speed chase and shootout near a landmark traffic circle. The choreography blends real vehicles, stunts, and long takes to create a seamless sense of danger and urgency. The cinematography emphasizes contrast, light, and shadow, heightening both the tension and the stylistic elegance of the film. During his journey, Wick encounters Kane, a blind but formidable assassin, who has been ordered by the High Table to kill him. Donnie Yen's Kane is introduced as a morally conflicted figure, highly disciplined and lethal, yet burdened by his own sense of honor and conscience. Their initial confrontation is a dramatic, martial arts-focused duel, showcasing Yen's signature combat skills. Over time, a reluctant understanding develops between them, allowing for temporary collaboration as they navigate the forces aligned against them. This alliance demonstrates a recurring theme of the series: even in a world dominated by violence and betrayal, trust and cooperation are possible, though often fleeting. Another central antagonist is Marquis Vincent de Gramont, portrayed by Bill Skarsgård, a high-ranking member of the High Table. De Gramont is cold, calculating, and relentless, embodying the political and militaristic authority of the organization. He orchestrates attempts to corner Wick at every turn, using both overt and subtle strategies. His presence elevates the tension, as he represents not only a physical threat but also the far-reaching influence and bureaucracy of the High Table. De Gramont's schemes force Wick to act strategically, blending improvisation with careful planning to survive multiple assassination attempts. Returning characters provide continuity and depth to the story. The Bowery King, played by Lawrence Fishburne, continues to operate within the underground network of the assassin world, offering intelligence, resources, and covert assistance. Winston, the Continental Hotel manager, navigates the political complexities of the High Table, balancing loyalty to Wick with his own interests. Sharon, the hotel concierge, remains a stabilizing presence, offering guidance and support. Their interactions with Wick illustrate the intricate web of allegiances and betrayals that define the assassin universe. Every alliance carries risk, and every decision can have deadly consequences. The film's action sequences are varied and innovative, combining traditional gunfights with martial arts, swordplay, and creative use of the environment. In one scene, Wick fights multiple opponents in a crowded nightclub, using rain, water, and tight spaces to his advantage. The choreography emphasizes rhythm and precision, allowing viewers to follow each movement while appreciating the complexity of the combat. Another sequence in Berlin involves a warehouse showdown, where Wick employs improvised weapons, strategic movement, and tactical awareness to survive against overwhelming odds. These sequences are meticulously shot to maintain clarity, tension, and visual flair, creating an immersive experience for the audience. Subplots throughout the movie further enrich the narrative. Wick navigates complex alliances, uncovering secret betrayals and hidden agendas. Some secondary assassins, initially appearing as enemies, reveal nuanced motivations or form temporary alliances. Themes of loyalty, revenge, and personal honor recur as characters confront moral dilemmas. Wick's personal motivations are explored more deeply than in previous films. His desire for autonomy, closure, and protection for those he cares about drives many of his choices. Flashbacks and references to past events provide context for Wick's relationships, debts, and the moral framework of the High Table, reinforcing the continuity of the series. The cinematography, led by Dan Lostson, emphasizes neo-noir aesthetics, contrasting dark, shadowed interiors with vibrant, neon-soaked exteriors. Locations are used not only for visual impact but also as functional elements in the action choreography. From narrow alleyways to grand halls, every environment is integrated into the combat sequences, making each confrontation unique. The use of practical effects, stunts, and minimal CGI gives the action a grounded, realistic feel, while sound design and score heighten tension and emotional resonance. Throughout the film, Wick faces both physical and emotional challenges. Each battle exacts a toll on his body and psyche, highlighting the human cost of his violent life. The narrative explores the exhaustion, pain, and moral ambiguity that accompany his role as an assassin. Wick's interactions with Kane, Winston, the Bowery King, and other characters reveal his strategic brilliance, moral code, and emotional depth, illustrating that his fight is not purely external but also internal, as he grapples with questions of freedom, justice, and identity. As the climax approaches, Wick orchestrates a final confrontation with the High Table's leadership, combining all the skills, knowledge, and alliances he has gathered. The final sequence is a culmination of tension, strategy, and combat, integrating multiple layers of conflict, both physical and ideological. Every fight, maneuver, and decision contributes to resolving the central narrative, while leaving certain moral and existential questions open for interpretation. Behind the scenes, production was extensive and ambitious. The film was shot across multiple countries, including France, Germany, Japan, and the United States. The production team prioritized practical effects, real locations, and extensive stunt coordination, creating visually immersive action sequences. Costume design, set construction, and lighting contribute to the film's distinctive neo-noir style, while the musical score accentuates both action and emotional beats. The ensemble cast was chosen for both acting skill and martial arts or physical performance ability, ensuring that combat sequences maintained authenticity and intensity. John Wick Chapter 4 premiered in London on March 6, 2023, and was released widely in the United States on March 24, 2023, after several pandemic-related delays. The film received critical acclaim for its direction, cinematography, choreography, visual style, and performances. Audiences praised the thrilling action, expanded mythology, and the emotional stakes surrounding Wick's character. The movie became the highest-grossing entry in the franchise, earning approximately $447 million worldwide, demonstrating the sustained popularity and impact of the series. The film balances high-octane action with narrative depth, exploring the consequences of a life lived in violence. Themes of loyalty, betrayal, vengeance, and personal freedom recur throughout, and every character encounter emphasizes the risks and moral ambiguities of the assassin world. While the film's climax resolves the immediate conflict with the High Table, it leaves questions about the ultimate fate of John Wick and the possibility of true freedom in a world defined by violence and codes of obligation. The movie expands the franchise both stylistically and narratively, delivering a global, visually striking, and emotionally resonant action epic that continues to define modern action cinema. The film opens with a tense, atmospheric depiction of New York City at night. Rain glistens on cobblestones and asphalt, puddles reflecting neon signs and streetlights, while distant traffic hums and sirens wail faintly in the background. The camera follows John Wick as he moves cautiously through dimly lit alleys, each step deliberate, each glance a measure of survival instinct. He carries the visible and invisible weight of past conflicts, evident in his measured gait and occasional grimaces from lingering injuries sustained in Chapter 3. The filmmakers employ tight, handheld shots to place viewers alongside John, immersing them in his immediate danger. Close-ups of his eyes, the tension in his hands, and subtle pauses in movement establish not just physical threat but emotional and psychological stakes. Here, the narrative emphasizes a core theme of the series: even the most skilled assassin is vulnerable, and every decision carries consequences. John's first interaction with Lawrence Fishburne's Bowery King sets both narrative and thematic tone. The Bowery King is introduced in a subterranean network beneath New York City, an environment that mirrors the clandestine operations and hidden hierarchies of the assassin world. The set design, flickering fluorescent lights, concrete walls etched with graffiti, and cluttered operational spaces, conveys resourcefulness, history, and the shadowed scale of influence the Bowery King wields. Their dialogue is layered, each line carrying dual meaning. "You're making waves you can't control," the Bowery King warns, suggesting both practical danger and moral consequence. John's terse response, full of controlled intensity, signals his commitment to his own moral code even in the face of organizational punishment. This opening conversation establishes the interplay between strategy, morality, and survival that dominates the narrative. Every alliance in the film, no matter how temporary, is underscored by negotiation, implicit threat, and mutual benefit. From New York, the narrative swiftly transitions to Morocco, where John pursues the Elder, a figure whose authority transcends conventional hierarchies within the High Table. The Moroccan sequences are a visual feast: sun-scorched courtyards, narrow marketplaces teeming with life, intricately patterned tiles, and opulent palatial interiors juxtapose danger with beauty. Cinematographer Dan Lawson utilizes sweeping aerial shots and tightly composed tracking sequences to heighten both scale and tension. John navigates these spaces using a combination of reconnaissance, observation, and improvisation. He moves through marketplaces crowded with civilians, blending into shadows, ducking behind stalls, and employing the environment strategically during confrontations. This environment-driven action emphasizes realism. Unlike traditional action sequences that ignore setting, here the geography actively shapes combat, strategy, and pacing. The confrontation with the Elder is both physical and symbolic. Guards swarm the palace corridors, their movements choreographed to maximize spatial complexity and threat. John engages in hand-to-hand combat punctuated with gun-fu techniques, transitioning fluidly between pistols, rifles, and melee strikes. Reeves' training allows him to maintain continuity in long takes, highlighting precision, efficiency, and lethal skill. The Elder's presence is understated but commanding, a narrative anchor representing systemic authority. When John ultimately eliminates him, the act is not just tactical but emblematic of rebellion against hierarchical oppression. Slow-motion sequences capture micro-expressions of John and his adversaries, allowing the audience to absorb both the physical intensity and the psychological weight of the confrontation. Immediately following, the film escalates tension with the introduction of Bill Skarsgård's Marquis Vincent de Grammont. The Marquis operates as a global orchestrator of violence, combining wealth, resources, and strategic intelligence to hunt John. Skarsgård's performance blends sophistication with menace. His calm demeanor and calculated speech contrast sharply with the brutal efficiency of his operations. Scenes of the Marquis reviewing surveillance feeds, dispatching assassins, and coordinating strikes across continents establish a sense of omnipresence and systemic threat. Unlike prior villains who are primarily localized, the Marquis represents a structural and strategic menace, forcing John to adapt not only physically but mentally and politically. The Osaka Continental sequences mark a narrative and stylistic shift. Koji and his daughter Akira provide both sanctuary and narrative stakes, introducing moral and emotional dimensions that expand John's character beyond pure survival. The hotel's design, minimalist, symmetrical, and culturally resonant, frames each sequence with visual clarity, emphasizing space, movement, and tension. Akira's presence humanizes the stakes. John's conflicts extend beyond self-preservation to protecting allies and innocents. Donnie Yen's Kane, coerced into confronting John under threat to his daughter, introduces ethical complexity. Yen's choreography, tailored to his character's blindness, emphasizes auditory perception, environmental awareness, and calculated strikes. In one hallway scene, he listens intently, gauging footfalls, air movement, and subtle echoes to anticipate John's attack, blending improvisation with precision. This innovation highlights the franchise's commitment to diverse and character-specific combat choreography. The Berlin sequences serve as both a narrative pivot and a thematic exploration of loyalty, obligation, and moral compromise. John must secure the support of the Ruska Roma crime syndicate by eliminating Killa Harkan. The filmmakers designed the combat arenas to exploit verticality, constrained stairwells, and industrial layouts, forcing John to employ both improvisation and planning. The choreography alternates between hand-to-hand strikes, tactical firearm engagement, and use of environmental elements such as walls, railings, and debris for advantage. Long tracking shots preserve spatial orientation while conveying kinetic energy. John's strategic thinking, feints, ambushes, and diversion, is as central as his physical skill, reinforcing the series' motif that survival requires both mind and body in harmony. The Paris duel at Sacré-Cœur represents narrative and thematic culmination. Observed by high-table representatives, the duel adheres to formalized rules, structured pistol exchanges at set distances, rounds meticulously counted, and ethical codes enforced. Cinematography captures the duality of scale and intimacy. Panoramic views of Paris convey grandeur, while close-ups of John, Kane, and the Marquis capture subtle emotional and psychological shifts. Each round of fire is choreographed to emphasize strategy, tension, and ethical decision-making. John's deliberate withholding of his final shot subverts expectations, demonstrating restraint, tactical brilliance, and moral agency. This moment crystallizes the film's central theme: mastery of both physical and ethical dimensions is the true measure of survival. Supporting characters reinforce narrative depth and thematic resonance. Winston Scott embodies negotiation between personal loyalty and systemic power. The Bowery King represents alliance, information networks, and moral pragmatism. Mr. Nobody's shifting allegiances illustrate moral fluidity. Akira and Kane emphasize human vulnerability and narrative stakes beyond the protagonist. These figures provide multidimensionality, ensuring the world is rich, coherent, and emotionally resonant. Production techniques enhance narrative clarity and immersion. Reeves and stunt teams execute long-take sequences, practical effects, and minimal CGI to preserve realism. Fight choreography integrates environmental props, spatial relationships, and continuity, maintaining both tension and clarity. Cinematography, lighting, and sound design work synergistically to heighten engagement. The score complements these elements: electronic pulses for intensity, orchestral swells for reflection, and subtle motifs for emotional nuance. Thematically, Chapter 4 explores morality, consequence, loyalty, and personal versus systemic obligation. John's personal code clashes with high-table enforcement, creating ethical tension that drives narrative and philosophical inquiry. Locations and choreography act as narrative symbols. Confinement reflects entrapment, open spaces symbolize freedom, and combat sequences embody moral and strategic struggle. The ambiguous ending, John's apparent death and funeral, provokes reflection on legacy, consequence, and narrative continuity, leaving open possibilities for future exploration in sequels and spin-offs. Critically, the film received acclaim for choreography, cinematography, narrative depth, and character development. Box office success, grossing $447.3 million globally, reflects audience engagement and franchise durability. Discussions of spin-offs, including Ballerina, and expanded universe exploration highlight the film's cultural and narrative impact. The narrative's psychological, ethical, and technical layers create a cinematic experience that balances spectacle, depth, and engagement. As John Wick moves toward the final acts of Chapter 4, the narrative tension reaches its zenith, and the convergence of plot threads, character arcs, and thematic elements sets the stage for the film's climactic duel. The duel is not merely a physical confrontation but the culmination of a multi-layered narrative encompassing strategy, morality, and personal agency. Preparation for the duel is extensive, both tactically and symbolically. John must adhere to the formalized rules of the high table, securing sponsorship from the Ruska Roma syndicate. This requirement introduces legalistic and ceremonial layers that amplify narrative complexity. John's successful reintegration into the Roma's ranks, facilitated by the elimination of Killa Harkan and the completion of other contractual obligations, underscores the franchise's unique blending of organized crime bureaucracy with lethal, hyper-stylized action. The duel itself is staged against the dramatic backdrop of Paris at sunrise, providing both a symbolic and aesthetic climax. Paris, with its iconic architecture, expansive staircases, and historic urban spaces, serves as a visual metaphor for the culmination of John's journey, a city that is simultaneously beautiful, treacherous, and unforgiving. The duel is conducted under the precise rules dictated by the high table. John and Marquis are to engage in a structured pistol duel with strict adherence to formalities. These rules heighten the tension, transforming the encounter into a strategic chess match as much as a physical confrontation. The choreography of the duel combines precise shooting, calculated movement, and environmental awareness, reflecting both characters' mastery of skill and situational tactics. Kane's presence during the duel adds a layer of psychological complexity. Although initially forced into conflict by the high table's coercion, Kane navigates his interactions with John and Marquis with strategic subtlety, ultimately contributing to the unfolding resolution. The interactions between these three figures are charged with moral ambiguity. Kane's loyalty is tested, Marquis' overconfidence is exploited, and John's skill, resilience, and ingenuity are pushed to their limits. The duel proceeds through multiple phases, with both John and Marquis sustaining injuries, and with strategic maneuvering influencing the outcome at every stage. John's eventual victory is the result of meticulous planning, adaptive tactics, and an acute understanding of his opponent's psychology. The resolution of the duel, while physically definitive, also incorporates a layer of narrative ambiguity. John survives the duel, achieving formal victory and earning his freedom from the high table, yet he is severely wounded. The final sequences depict John collapsing and a gravestone bearing his name, situated beside the memorial of his deceased wife, suggesting a potential death. This ambiguity is intentional, allowing the filmmakers to provide closure to the immediate arc while leaving open the possibility of continuation or future narrative exploration. The juxtaposition of triumph and mortality encapsulates the franchise's thematic core: the cost of defiance, the consequences of skill and reputation, and the inescapable consequences of a life defined by violence. Parallel to the narrative climax, Chapter 4 continues to demonstrate the franchise's technical mastery. Cinematographer Dan Lawson's work highlights the interplay of light and shadow, enhancing the neo-noir aesthetic while maintaining visual clarity in fast-paced action sequences. The framing of the duel and surrounding confrontations employs wide shots, dynamic camera movements, and precise choreography to ensure both cinematic spectacle and narrative comprehension. Sound design, including diegetic and non-diegetic elements, accentuates gunfire, impact, and environmental audio, enhancing immersion and tension. The integration of these technical elements underscores the franchise's commitment to a holistic cinematic experience, where visual, auditory, and narrative components are seamlessly interwoven. Beyond the duel, the narrative examines the consequences for secondary characters and the broader underworld network. Winston Scott is reinstated as the manager of the New York Continental, symbolizing a partial restoration of order and stability. The Bowery King continues to wield influence in the underworld, reflecting the persistence of clandestine networks and the cyclical nature of power dynamics within the High Table universe. Kane and his daughter are granted freedom from coercion, providing a narrative resolution for a character whose arc has intertwined with John's journey throughout the film. These outcomes reinforce the franchise's thematic focus on loyalty, consequence, and the moral calculus inherent in a world governed by violence and hierarchical authority. Thematically, Chapter 4 expands upon recurring motifs while introducing new dimensions. The film explores the tension between personal code and institutional authority, highlighting the ways in which individual agency operates within rigid hierarchies. Loyalty is depicted as both a source of strength and vulnerability, with alliances and betrayals driving much of the narrative tension. The consequences of violence, both immediate and cumulative, are emphasized through physical injury, psychological strain, and social repercussion. John's character embodies a paradoxical duality, a figure capable of extraordinary violence yet governed by a personal moral compass, navigating a world where ethics are often subordinated to pragmatism and survival. The film's production design further reinforces thematic and narrative elements. Locations such as Paris, Berlin, Osaka, and Morocco are not merely aesthetic backdrops, they inform tactical decisions, influence combat choreography, and enhance emotional resonance. Set design incorporates both practicality and symbolism, creating environments that challenge the characters physically and strategically while reinforcing the narrative's visual language. Costuming, lighting, and color grading contribute to character definition, thematic emphasis, and the overall neo-noir aesthetic that has become a hallmark of the franchise. From a critical perspective, John Wick Chapter 4 has been praised for its ambition, scale, and execution. The film grossed over $447 million worldwide, becoming the highest-grossing entry in the franchise. Critics highlighted the intricacy of the action sequences, the depth of character exploration, and the expansion of the franchise's narrative universe. Some critiques focused on the narrative density and extended runtime, suggesting that while the action is compelling, the complexity of subplots and the abundance of characters can occasionally challenge narrative clarity. Nonetheless, the film is widely regarded as a high-water mark for the series, demonstrating that even a fourth installment can innovate, expand scope, and maintain both critical and commercial momentum. The cultural impact of Chapter 4 extends beyond box office numbers. The film has influenced action filmmaking standards, particularly in the choreography of mixed martial arts and gunplay, as well as in integrating narrative depth with kinetic spectacle. Keanu Reeves's commitment to physical performance and stunt work continues to set benchmarks for authenticity and audience engagement. The franchise's attention to rules, rituals, and hierarchical structures within the assassin universe has also contributed to its unique identity, distinguishing it from conventional action franchises. In summary, the climactic and concluding sequences of John Wick Chapter 4 combine technical brilliance, narrative closure, and thematic richness. The duel with Marquis Vincent de Gramont serves as both the narrative and symbolic apex, demonstrating John's strategic mastery, resilience, and moral complexity. The film balances spectacle with substance, integrating elaborate action choreography, cinematic innovation, and character-driven storytelling. The aftermath provides closure for primary and secondary characters while maintaining narrative ambiguity, allowing the franchise to continue evolving. Production, cinematography, sound design, and visual aesthetics coalesce to create an immersive experience that elevates Chapter 4 above conventional action cinema. By combining expansive world-building, emotionally resonant character arcs, hyper-stylized combat, and narrative sophistication, John Wick Chapter 4 exemplifies the evolution of the series and its capacity to sustain audience engagement across multiple installments. Its exploration of loyalty, morality, consequence, and personal agency, set against the backdrop of a meticulously constructed criminal underworld, ensures its enduring relevance and influence within contemporary cinema. The film demonstrates that action, when married to narrative intelligence and thematic depth, can achieve both spectacle and resonance, solidifying John Wick's status as a modern cinematic icon. After escaping Paris, John Wick travels to Berlin, a city teeming with danger and deception. The skyline of Berlin at night is cold and industrial, reflecting the calculated ruthlessness of the high table's enforcers. John's arrival is unceremonious. He moves through narrow alleys and abandoned subway tunnels, using the shadows to avoid detection. Early in this segment, he contacts an old associate who provides information about the next set of operatives sent to intercept him. These interactions are tense, filled with veiled threats and subtle gestures, illustrating the constant risk of betrayal in the assassin world. The city itself feels like a living obstacle course, with John using the urban environment strategically to his advantage. The first major confrontation in Berlin occurs in a hotel lobby, where several of de Greymont's assassins have cornered John. He enters the space with his signature calm precision, surveying the room and assessing escape routes. One adversary rushes him with a combat knife, which John deflects with a combination of blocks and counters, immediately transitioning to a gun strike that neutralizes the threat. Another attacker swings a heavy object from above, and John rolls to absorb the impact while delivering a spinning back kick, knocking the assailant into a glass partition. Each movement is choreographed for both clarity and intensity, emphasizing John's mastery of his environment. It is in Berlin that Donnie Yen's character makes his entrance, presented as a formidable martial artist whose reputation rivals John's. The two meet in a dimly lit stairwell, where the fight begins with a mutual assessment of skill, each recognizing the other's lethal capabilities. The duel is an intricate blend of martial arts and improvised weapon use. John employs gun-fu techniques, firing controlled bursts while maintaining fluid movement to avoid strikes. Yen counters with precise kicks, elbow strikes, and acrobatic maneuvers, forcing John to adapt constantly. The environment becomes an integral part of the choreography. Stair railings are used to pivot attacks, banisters to swing into strikes, and narrow landings to control distance. At one point, John grabs a steel pipe, using it to parry Yen's strike before delivering a combination of punches and a knee strike that temporarily staggers his opponent. The fight is punctuated by quick dialogue exchanges that reveal tension but also a mutual understanding of respect and skill. Neither can underestimate the other. Following the intense confrontation, John gains crucial information about de Greymont's plans and the structure of the High Table's power network. He realizes that defeating de Greymont will require more than brute force. It demands strategy, alliances, and manipulation. Berlin's cold, industrial landscape reinforces the sense of danger and urgency, contrasting with the opulence of Paris and signaling a shift in the stakes. From Berlin, John moves to Japan, seeking guidance from Shimazu, portrayed by Hiroyuki Sanada. The Japanese sequences introduce a cultural and stylistic shift, blending traditional martial arts aesthetics with the kinetic energy of John Wick's established combat style. Upon arrival, John navigates dense alleyways, cherry blossom-lined courtyards, and the interior of Shimazu's dojo. Shimazu presents him with both advice and a test. John must demonstrate not only his physical prowess but also his capacity for strategy and restraint. The dojo sequence features swordplay, hand-to-hand combat drills, and environmental interaction. John's movements are deliberate, deflecting strikes with forearms and legs while countering with precise punches and acrobatic maneuvers. Shimazu assesses John's technique, observing how he adapts his gun-fu style to traditional sword combat. A pivotal sequence in Japan involves John and Akira in a narrow rooftop chase. They engage in a tense duel that combines speed, agility, and environmental awareness. Akira uses her blades skillfully, striking with precision and attempting to control the fight through footwork and timing. John, relying on a combination of firearms and hand-to-hand techniques, counters each move, exploiting gaps in her defense. At one point, he uses a rooftop railing to pivot into a spinning kick that disarms her temporarily, demonstrating his mastery of both improvisation and environmental combat. Their duel is as much about testing each other as it is about survival, creating a layered narrative tension that goes beyond simple action spectacle. During the Japanese sequences, John also negotiates with minor allies and local factions, leveraging his reputation and experience to secure temporary support. These interactions reveal the complexity of the High Table's reach and the precarious nature of alliances in the assassin world. Every gesture, every word, and every minor decision carries weight, emphasizing the constant tension underlying John's journey. While the focus remains on action, these moments provide context, motivation, and insight into both John and the world he navigates. Towards the end of Part 2, John consolidates his plan for confronting Marquis Vincent de Gramont. He integrates the intelligence gathered in Berlin and Japan, preparing a multi-pronged strategy to challenge the High Table directly. This preparation involves precise timing, manipulation of the environment, and coordination with select allies, highlighting John's dual reliance on physical skill and tactical acumen. The sequences conclude with John setting out from Japan towards New York, the stage for the climactic confrontation, carrying with him the experience, injuries, and knowledge acquired across his international journey. The characters of John Wick, Chapter 4 are central not only to the narrative's progression but also to the franchise's enduring appeal. Keanu Reeves reprises his role as John Wick, a character whose stoic intensity, relentless determination, and moral complexity have defined modern action cinema. In this installment, Wick is portrayed not simply as a survivor or avenger but as a calculated strategist confronting the institutionalized power of the High Table. His physicality remains a defining characteristic, with Reeves performing a substantial portion of his own stunts, which lends authenticity to the combat sequences and elevates the film's visceral realism. Beyond the physicality, Wick's character development explores themes of autonomy, morality, and existential fatigue. He grapples with the psychological burden of a life dictated by violence and the relentless pursuit of those who would see him dead. Donnie Yen's introduction as Kane represents one of the film's most dynamic character additions. Kane is a blind assassin whose skills are matched only by his discipline and adherence to his own moral code. Despite his disability, he navigates complex combat situations with precision and acute awareness, creating some of the most memorable action sequences in the film. Kane's character adds moral ambiguity and emotional resonance, as his interactions with Wick oscillate between adversarial tension and reluctant alliance. This relationship highlights thematic contrasts between the characters. Wick operates on instinct and experience, while Kane relies on heightened perception, discipline, and strategic patience. Their partnership and conflict provide not only kinetic action but also a nuanced exploration of loyalty, honor, and the ethics of survival in a world ruled by violence. Bill Skarsgård's portrayal of Marquis Vincent de Gramont introduces the central antagonist whose intelligence, charisma, and ruthlessness make him a formidable adversary. The Marquis embodies the strategic and manipulative aspect of the High Table, orchestrating deadly encounters and exerting psychological pressure on Wick. His presence elevates the narrative tension, providing a foil to Wick's direct and action-oriented approach. The Marquis' methods are not solely physical, they involve intricate plotting, the use of proxies, and exploitation of Wick's relationships, demonstrating that the fight against institutional power requires both cunning and resilience. Skarsgård's performance balances menace with sophistication, creating a villain who is both terrifying and compelling, a true embodiment of the systemic threat that Wick confronts. Lawrence Fishburne returns as the Bowery King, a character whose intelligence network and underground influence are instrumental to Wick's efforts against the High Table. The Bowery King's interactions with Wick are defined by mutual respect, shared history, and strategic necessity. Their relationship emphasizes the importance of alliances and networks in navigating the assassin underworld, highlighting that survival extends beyond physical combat into negotiation, intelligence gathering, and the cultivation of loyalty. Fishburne's portrayal lends gravitas to the film, reinforcing the moral and emotional stakes of Wick's mission while offering a counterpoint to the relentless kinetic energy of the action sequences. Lance Reddick's Sharon continues to serve as the concierge and mediator of the Continental Hotel, a neutral space within the assassin underworld. Karen's role in Chapter 4 maintains the series' tradition of blending formality, subtle humor, and loyalty into an understated yet pivotal character. His support for Wick is often logistical, providing critical intelligence, safe havens, and access to resources. Sharon embodies the franchise's theme of professional honor amidst violence, and his interactions with Wick reveal both the continuity of trust and the consequences of breaking established codes. Reddick's portrayal brings consistency, reliability, and subtle emotional depth, underscoring the relational dimensions of Wick's otherwise violent journey. Hiroyuki Sanada's Shimazu Koji represents another formidable adversary, engaging Wick in combat that blends traditional martial arts with the franchise's signature gunfu style. Koji's character is defined by discipline, honor, and precision, offering a counterpoint to Wick's adaptive and instinct-driven methods. Their confrontation is not merely physical but also symbolic, representing the intersection of different philosophies of combat and survival. Koji's presence enriches the narrative by highlighting the diversity of the assassin world and the varying codes that govern its participants, emphasizing that Wick's journey is as much about understanding his adversaries as it is about defeating them. Shamir Anderson's Tracker introduces another layer of intrigue and tension. As a new character, he embodies the relentless pursuit aspect of the High Table's enforcement mechanism. Tracker's abilities, resourcefulness, and unpredictability make him a significant challenge for Wick, emphasizing the persistent danger that surrounds him. The inclusion of such characters underscores the film's thematic focus on vigilance, strategy, and the consequences of underestimating one's opponents, while also creating opportunities for inventive action sequences that highlight Wick's ingenuity. Rina Sawayama's Akira, a sword-wielding assassin making her feature film debut, adds a fresh and visually dynamic threat to Wick. Akira's combat style, blending traditional melee weapon mastery with modern cinematic action, represents a creative evolution in the series' choreography. Her interactions with Wick, though brief in duration, leave a lasting impact on the narrative and the audience, demonstrating the franchise's commitment to introducing new, memorable characters who challenge the protagonist in innovative ways. Similarly, Scott Adkins' Killa provides intense physical confrontations that further escalate the stakes, combining brutal hand-to-hand combat with narrative significance by acting as an obstacle designed to test Wick's resilience and tactical acumen. The supporting cast, including returning figures such as Ian McShane's Winston and Clancy Brown in undisclosed roles, enriches the narrative landscape by providing continuity, additional conflict, and strategic dynamics. Winston's ongoing involvement with the Continental Hotel and the High Table exemplifies the tension between institutional loyalty and personal relationships, while the introduction of new supporting figures expands the scope of the assassin network and reinforces the global reach of the High Table's influence. Each character, whether returning or new, contributes to the narrative architecture, either by aiding, challenging, or complicating Wick's objectives, creating a layered and interconnected world that heightens both drama and action. The relationships among these characters are pivotal to the emotional and narrative resonance of the film. Alliances are fragile and often contingent upon immediate survival needs, with trust constantly tested. Wick's interactions with allies such as Kane, the Bowery King, and Sharon reveal his reliance on intellect, loyalty, and experience, highlighting that success in his world is not simply determined by combat skill but by strategic thinking, negotiation, and moral judgment. The antagonists, from the Marquis to Shimazu Koji to Akira, present challenges that are both physical and philosophical, forcing Wick to confront not only immediate threats but also questions of ethics, justice, and personal codes. These complex character dynamics elevate the narrative from a simple revenge story to a multidimensional exploration of survival, loyalty, and consequence in a morally ambiguous world. Moreover, the film utilizes character development to enhance the impact of its action sequences. Every fight, chase, or confrontation is contextualized within relationships, motivations, or past events, making the action narratively meaningful rather than purely aesthetic. Wick's movements are informed by his understanding of his opponent's skills and strategies, reflecting the psychological and strategic dimensions of combat. Similarly, the antagonists' actions are motivated by their roles within the High Table and their personal objectives, ensuring that the stakes remain high and that each confrontation contributes to the overarching narrative tension. The interplay between character development and action is one of the film's most compelling aspects, ensuring that viewers are invested not only in what happens but also in why it happens. In summary, The cast of John Wick Chapter 4 is a carefully balanced ensemble that blends returning characters with new, formidable additions to create a rich, dynamic, and globally scoped narrative. Each character is fully realized, with distinct motivations, skills, and relationships that contribute to the story's complexity and the franchise's mythos. The interactions among these characters drive both the plot and the action, ensuring that the film is as emotionally engaging as it is visually and kinetically spectacular. By weaving together personal stakes, institutional conflict, and innovative action choreography, Chapter 4 continues to expand the John Wick universe, offering audiences a multifaceted exploration of violence, loyalty, and survival in a morally complex world. John Wick Chapter 4 begins with John Wick still a fugitive, relentlessly pursued by the High Table after the events of the previous films. His life has become a continuous struggle for survival, and every step he takes is met with deadly opposition. Wick moves through the dark, shadowy corridors of the underworld, aware that a single misstep could be fatal. From the opening sequences, the film establishes the stakes: assassins lie in wait, contracts have been issued on his life, and even familiar faces may no longer be allies. The early scenes immediately place Wick in peril, emphasizing the constant danger and the meticulous precision required to survive in a world where every individual carries lethal skill and no one can be trusted. Wick's journey begins in Japan, where he is chased through crowded city streets and narrow alleyways. The cinematography in these sequences combines tight framing, fast cuts, and long takes, immersing viewers in the chaos of the chase while maintaining clarity of action. He is pursued by skilled operatives who know the High Table's codes and tactics. Despite being outnumbered, Wick's training and experience allow him to use environmental advantages to his favor. He engages in hand-to-hand combat with multiple opponents, using objects from the environment as improvised weapons. Rain-soaked streets, neon signage, and urban textures are integrated into the fight sequences, turning the city itself into a dynamic stage for the action. During this portion of the story, Wick encounters Kane, a blind assassin sent by the High Table to eliminate him. Kane, portrayed by Donnie Yen, is highly disciplined and possesses heightened sensory awareness. Their first confrontation is tense and visually striking, combining martial arts with strategy, misdirection, and surprise attacks. Although Kane is initially an antagonist, as the story progresses, his interactions with Wick reveal a moral complexity. Kane struggles with his duty to the High Table versus his personal sense of honor. This gradual shift sets the stage for a reluctant alliance that becomes critical in the later stages of the narrative. As Wick moves to Paris, the film introduces new layers of tension. The city becomes a battleground for a high-speed, high-risk confrontation at a landmark traffic circle. Cars weave dangerously around the combatants as Wick fights multiple opponents, blending gunplay, acrobatics, and tactical maneuvering. The sequence is choreographed to emphasize Wick's skill and resourcefulness, illustrating how he can anticipate enemy movements and exploit weaknesses in real time. The Paris sequence also serves to show the global scale of the High Table's reach, demonstrating how every city becomes a potential arena for violence. Meanwhile, Marquis Vincent de Gramont, played by Bill Skarsgård, emerges as a central antagonist. He is portrayed as calculating, ruthless, and commanding. His strategies involve both direct confrontation and manipulation of the High Table's resources, aiming to corner Wick and eliminate any chance of escape. De Gramont's presence heightens the stakes, as Wick must now navigate not only physical threats but also strategic, politically motivated traps that test his intelligence, adaptability, and patience. In Berlin, Wick faces one of the most elaborate action sequences of the film. Inside a massive warehouse, he is confronted by multiple High Table enforcers in a carefully staged battle. The environment is used creatively, with stacked crates, narrow catwalks, and heavy machinery serving as obstacles, cover, and weapons. Wick uses a combination of firearms, close combat, and improvised techniques to neutralize his attackers. The choreography emphasizes continuous movement and fluidity, ensuring each sequence is visually engaging while demonstrating the extreme physical demands placed on the character. This sequence also deepens the narrative tension, highlighting Wick's exhaustion, determination, and unwavering focus under pressure. The Bowery King, portrayed by Lawrence Fishburne, provides intelligence and support, illustrating the complex network of alliances that exist beneath the surface of the assassin world. His resources help Wick anticipate attacks and understand the high table's strategic decisions. Winston, the Continental's manager, continues to navigate the precarious political landscape, balancing the rules of neutrality with his personal interests and connections to Wick. Sharon remains a stabilizing presence, assisting Wick with access, resources, and counsel. These returning characters reinforce the continuity of the series and emphasize the themes of loyalty, obligation, and strategic alliance. As the story unfolds, secondary assassins and enforcers introduce additional challenges. Each combat encounter is designed not only to showcase action but also to develop character and highlight Wick's mental and physical endurance. Some minor characters reveal unexpected moral complexity, with temporary alliances forming or dissolving based on shifting loyalties and survival instincts. Every fight and encounter carries consequences, shaping the trajectory of the narrative and reinforcing the idea that in this world, every decision is consequential. Production-wise, the film is ambitious. Filming took place across France, Germany, Japan, and the United States, with extensive coordination for stunts, practical effects, and real locations. The production team focused on minimizing CGI for combat sequences, emphasizing realistic physicality and immersive choreography. Costumes, set design, and lighting reinforced the neo-noir aesthetic, providing a stylish yet grounded backdrop for the high-octane action. The musical score complements the visuals, using rhythm and tension to heighten emotional and kinetic impact. The Paris nightclub sequence later in the film represents a turning point. Wick navigates crowded, rain-soaked interiors, fighting multiple assassins while simultaneously protecting allies and avoiding civilian casualties. The choreography integrates martial arts, firearms, and environmental manipulation, demonstrating Wick's adaptability and ingenuity. These sequences are not only visually spectacular but also contribute to the narrative arc, as Wick gathers critical information and weakens the high table's control incrementally. As Wick's journey continues, alliances with Kane and select other operatives allow him to approach the high table's leadership with a tactical advantage. Each scene escalates stakes, demonstrating Wick's resourcefulness, moral judgment, and ability to improvise under extreme pressure. The story balances spectacle with emotional resonance, exploring themes of revenge, loyalty, autonomy, and the personal cost of a life defined by violence. The climax involves a multi-layered confrontation with the high table leadership. Wick combines everything he has learned and all the resources at his disposal, engaging in combat that spans multiple environments and employs a combination of strategy, martial arts, and firearms expertise. Every moment in this sequence tests his endurance, skill, and decision-making. The final confrontation is visually and emotionally intense, demonstrating both the physical and moral challenges of his journey. The resolution of the film is bittersweet. While the immediate threat from the high table is neutralized, the story emphasizes the enduring consequences of Wick's life choices. Themes of mortality, consequence, and the cost of freedom permeate the final scenes, leaving viewers to reflect on Wick's journey and the lasting impact of the violent world he inhabits. The film premiered in London on March 6, 2023, and released widely in the United States on March 24, 2023. It was delayed several times due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The film received critical acclaim for its choreography, visual style, cinematography, and performances, particularly Reeves. It became the highest-grossing entry in the franchise, earning approximately $447 million worldwide. Critics and audiences praised the expanded mythology, the emotional stakes, and the globally staged action sequences. John Wick Chapter 4 succeeds as both an action spectacle and a continuation of the series' narrative. It expands the universe, deepens character arcs, and explores the consequences of a life steeped in violence while maintaining the thrilling intensity that defines the franchise. Every fight, every decision, and every alliance underscores the tension, moral ambiguity, and human cost that Wick faces, solidifying the film as one of the most ambitious and stylistically accomplished entries in modern action cinema. The film opens with John Wick in the rain-soaked streets of New York City, a visual metaphor for both danger and isolation. Streetlights reflect off puddles, creating fractured reflections that mirror John's fractured state of mind. The filmmakers deliberately use long, lingering tracking shots to immerse the audience in John's environment, showing not only his movements but also the urban labyrinth that defines his world. Every detail, from the faint echo of distant sirens to the subtle drip of water from gutters, is employed to heighten tension. John navigates the city with extreme caution, scanning rooftops and alleyways, listening for footsteps, analyzing shadows. His awareness is absolute, and the film communicates this through careful sound design, camera movement, and performance nuances. Early dialogue with Lawrence Fishburne's Bowery King establishes the moral and strategic landscape. The Bowery King is a master manipulator of underworld networks, and the mise-en-scene reinforces this: dimly lit subterranean halls, flickering fluorescent lights, and cluttered operational spaces filled with maps, surveillance feeds, and historical graffiti. Their conversation is laden with subtext, reflecting trust, strategy, and the ethical ambiguity of their world. "You're making waves you can't control," the Bowery King warns, suggesting both practical danger and moral consequence. John's terse, focused responses convey his singular focus on survival and his adherence to a personal moral code. This scene establishes the recurring theme that even in a world ruled by violence, intellect, loyalty, and planning are as crucial as physical skill. Transitioning to Morocco, the film's production design emphasizes opulence, cultural authenticity, and narrative stakes. The elder resides in a palace with ornate tiles, intricate woodwork, and labyrinthine corridors. Cinematographer Dan Lostson balances wide establishing shots to communicate scale with tight tracking shots that maintain tension during combat. The Moroccan sequences employ environmental storytelling. Narrow alleys, crowded marketplaces, and high vantage points serve both tactical and cinematic functions. Here, combat is spatially integrated. John uses stalls, stairs, and walls to gain advantage, reflecting the franchise's commitment to realistic action within stylized cinematography. The confrontation with the Elder is both physical and symbolic. Long, fluid sequences combine hand-to-hand combat with gun-fu, showcasing Reeves' meticulous training. Every strike, weapon transition, and tactical movement is executed with clarity and precision. The Elder himself serves as a narrative anchor, representing the hierarchical authority John is rebelling against. Cinematic techniques, slow motion on micro-expressions, tracking shots of movement through corridors, and shifts in camera angle, underscore the psychological weight of the encounter. John's eventual elimination of the Elder is a turning point, signaling defiance and escalating the conflict globally. Immediately after, Bill Skarsgård's Marquis Vincent de Graymont is introduced. Skarsgård presents a chillingly controlled antagonist, combining meticulous strategic planning with lethal efficiency. Scenes depict him analyzing maps, coordinating assassins, and leveraging global resources. Unlike previous high-table enforcers, the Marquis represents systemic power rather than localized threat. His omnipresence forces John to contend not only with physical danger but with an overarching organizational strategy, escalating stakes, and narrative complexity. The Osaka Continental Hotel sequences introduce Koji and Akira, characters who blend sanctuary, moral grounding, and narrative stakes. The hotel's minimalist Japanese aesthetic contrasts serenity with imminent threat. Koji provides strategic counsel while maintaining ethical integrity, and Akira introduces stakes that extend beyond John himself. Donnie Yen's Kane is coerced into confronting John, adding moral ambiguity. Kane's blindness necessitates unique choreography. He relies on auditory cues, vibrations, and environmental awareness. In hallway sequences, he anticipates attacks using subtle cues, executes precise strikes, and manipulates spatial elements to maintain advantage. These sequences highlight the franchise's innovation in tailoring combat to character traits while maintaining clarity, intensity, and narrative significance. Berlin sequences deepen thematic exploration of loyalty, obligation, and moral compromise. John negotiates with the Ruska Roma, required to eliminate Killa Harkan to secure support. Combat occurs in vertical and industrial arenas, stairwells, rooftops, and corridors, demanding adaptability, improvisation, and tactical intelligence. Long-take cinematography preserves spatial continuity, while choreography blends hand-to-hand combat with firearm strategy and environmental interaction. John's strategic thinking, feints, ambushes, and environmental manipulation, is central, reinforcing that survival depends on intellect as much as physical prowess. The Paris duel at Sacré-Cœur functions as narrative, thematic, and visual climax. The duel adheres to high table codes, structured pistol exchanges, observers enforcing fairness, and multiple rounds with defined distances. Cinematography alternates between wide shots showcasing Parisian grandeur and close-ups revealing psychological states. Each round is choreographed to highlight strategy, tension, and ethical deliberation. John's final decision to withhold his last shot subverts expectations, demonstrating restraint, tactical brilliance, and moral agency. This sequence crystallizes the film's themes: mastery of both physical and ethical dimensions defines survival. Supporting characters enrich narrative and thematic texture. Winston Scott embodies negotiation between loyalty and systemic obligation. The Bowery King emphasizes alliances and strategic networks. Mr. Nobody illustrates moral fluidity, and Akira and Kane underscore human vulnerability. These characters create a multidimensional world, adding emotional depth, stakes, and narrative coherence. Production techniques heighten realism and immersion. Reeves and the stunt team perform long-take sequences with minimal CGI. Environmental choreography integrates furniture, walls, and spatial obstacles, reinforcing spatial realism. Lighting, camera movement, and sound design amplify tension and narrative clarity. Tyler Bates and Joel J. Richards' score employs electronic pulses and orchestral motifs, aligning rhythm with action and emotion, enhancing tension, pacing, and immersion. Thematically, Chapter 4 continues to explore morality, consequence, loyalty, and the conflict between personal and systemic codes. John Wick's personal code clashes with high table enforcement, creating ethical tension and narrative depth. Locations and choreography function symbolically. Confinement represents entrapment, open vistas reflect freedom, and combat embodies moral and strategic struggle. The ambiguous ending, John's apparent death and funeral, invites reflection on legacy, consequence, and narrative continuity, leaving open avenues for sequels and spin-offs. Critically, the film earned acclaim for choreography, cinematography, narrative complexity, and character development. Global box office success, approximately $447.3 million, reflects both audience engagement and franchise longevity. Spin-offs such as Ballerina and potential future sequels highlight the narrative richness and cultural impact of Chapter 4. The combination of psychological, ethical, and technical depth establishes the film as a benchmark in contemporary action cinema. Beyond the narrative and character arcs, John Wick Chapter 4 is distinguished by the meticulous attention paid to its production and technical execution. From the earliest planning stages, the filmmakers sought to elevate the franchise's visual and physical storytelling to unprecedented levels. Chad Stahelski, drawing upon his extensive experience as a stunt coordinator, collaborated closely with Keanu Reeves, the stunt team, and the cinematography department to create sequences that are both coherent and visually spectacular. Practical stunts dominate the film, ensuring that the action feels authentic and grounded, while careful choreography and repeated rehearsals allowed complex sequences to unfold seamlessly. Reeves, known for his dedication to performing many of his own stunts, underwent rigorous physical training, weapons handling instruction, and martial arts preparation to maintain continuity and realism throughout the production. Fight choreography in Chapter 4 reflects a synthesis of martial arts, tactical firearms training, environmental improvisation, and narrative purpose. Each sequence is crafted to communicate not only skill but character and story. For instance, hand-to-hand combat sequences emphasize John's precision, discipline, and adaptability. Long hallways, staircases, and confined spaces become arenas in which strategic thinking is as critical as physical prowess. Gun-fu sequences, a signature of the franchise, combine rapid, fluid shooting with acrobatic movements and environmental interaction, often turning ordinary objects, chairs, walls, railings, into defensive or offensive tools. Each action beat is carefully timed and visualized to ensure clarity, continuity, and cinematic impact, a hallmark of the franchise that distinguishes it from conventional action films. The soundtrack and score further enhance the narrative and emotional intensity of Chapter 4. Electronic, orchestral, and percussive elements are blended to create a soundscape that mirrors the kinetic energy of the on-screen action. During chase sequences and duels, the music underscores rhythm, tension, and suspense, heightening audience immersion. At quieter moments, particularly those focusing on character reflection or moral dilemma, the score shifts to minimalistic textures, emphasizing isolation, fatigue, and psychological strain. Sound design, including the nuanced layering of gunfire, footsteps, environmental noise, and impacts, is critical to the film's immersive quality, providing auditory clarity that complements the visual precision of fight sequences. Cinematography is another cornerstone of Chapter 4's production excellence. Dan Laustsen's work continues the franchise's neo-noir aesthetic while expanding its visual vocabulary. Lighting, color grading, and composition are employed to emphasize mood, thematic resonance, and spatial awareness. For example, duels and ambush sequences often use high-contrast lighting, highlighting silhouettes and movements against urban backdrops, thereby combining stylistic flair with functional clarity. Wide shots, tracking shots, and dynamic camera angles allow viewers to follow complex action, while maintaining narrative comprehension and emotional engagement. The interplay between motion, framing, and environmental context reinforces the thematic and dramatic stakes, ensuring that visual storytelling remains integral to the overall narrative. Scene by scene, Chapter 4 maintains a deliberate structure that balances exposition, character development, and escalating action. The opening establishes John's vulnerable state and sets the geopolitical stage of the high-table conflict. Moroccan sequences emphasize the narrative consequences of challenging authority, while Parisian and Berlin pursuits illustrate John's tactical mastery and strategic improvisation. Osaka sequences integrate narrative resolution with moral and ethical considerations, highlighting John's alliances, adaptability, and decision-making under duress. Each sequence builds logically toward the climactic duel, ensuring that tension escalates consistently while maintaining clarity, pacing, and engagement. Thematic analysis reveals recurring motifs that elevate Chapter 4 beyond mere action spectacle. Loyalty, personal code, revenge, consequence, and the cost of violence remain central to the narrative. John Wick's actions are guided by a complex moral framework that contrasts with the high table's rigid authoritarian structure. Relationships, alliances, and betrayals are not superficial but deeply intertwined with character motivation, emphasizing the human dimension within a hyperviolent world. The psychological toll of John's life, including the loss of his wife, the constant threat of death, and the strain of moral decision-making, is consistently emphasized, adding gravitas to sequences that might otherwise be perceived purely as kinetic spectacle. Speculative aspects of the franchise future are suggested through narrative ambiguity and the expansive world-building. John's apparent death, indicated by gravestones and his collapse, leaves open possibilities for continuation, whether through resurrection, narrative recontextualization, or spin-offs exploring other facets of the high-table universe. Secondary characters, including Winston, Bowery King, Kane, and Shimazu Koji, remain viable focal points for future stories, reinforcing the franchise's capacity to expand organically while maintaining thematic and narrative consistency. The universe's complex social hierarchies, codes of conduct, and global reach ensure that opportunities for storytelling are virtually limitless, spanning political intrigue, assassinations, moral dilemmas, and explorations of loyalty and honor. From a production perspective, the film's international shooting locations, Paris, Berlin, Osaka, New York, and Morocco, were selected not only for visual impact but for tactical and narrative authenticity. Location scouting, set design, and logistical planning ensured that sequences were feasible, visually compelling, and narratively consistent. Practical effects, pyrotechnics, and stunt coordination were integrated to maximize realism and intensity, minimizing reliance on CGI while enhancing the tactile authenticity of combat. The film's impact extends beyond narrative and visual achievement. Critics and audiences alike have praised Chapter 4 for its innovative approach to action cinema, its intricate plotting, and its commitment to character-driven spectacle. Box office success, with gross earnings exceeding $447 million worldwide, demonstrates the commercial viability of high-concept, meticulously executed action films. The franchise continues to influence contemporary filmmaking standards, particularly in choreography, stunt integration, cinematography, and world-building, setting a benchmark for narrative sophistication within the action genre. In conclusion, John Wick Chapter 4 represents a culmination of narrative ambition, technical mastery, and thematic exploration within a long-running action franchise. By integrating meticulous fight choreography, immersive cinematography, innovative sound design, complex character arcs, and morally resonant storytelling, the film achieves a balance of spectacle and substance that elevates it above conventional entries in the genre. The narrative structure, from initial vulnerability to climactic duel and ambiguous resolution, demonstrates careful pacing, escalating tension, and satisfying narrative logic. Thematic depth, including explorations of loyalty, consequence, morality, and personal code, provides intellectual and emotional resonance, ensuring that the film's impact extends beyond immediate visual spectacle. Production insights, including practical stunts, international locations, and collaborative choreography, illustrate the level of craft required to sustain such a complex cinematic undertaking. Finally, the film's open-ended resolution, coupled with robust world-building, ensures the franchise's continuing relevance and narrative potential, providing a fertile ground for future stories, spin-offs, and explorations of the high-table universe. Chapter 4 is not merely a continuation of John Wick's journey but an elevation of the franchise's narrative and aesthetic ambition, demonstrating that high-octane action, when combined with sophisticated storytelling and thematic depth, can achieve enduring cultural and cinematic significance. John returns to New York City with a singular focus, to confront Marquis Vincent de Graymont and dismantle the power structure of the High Table once and for all. The city, now portrayed as a labyrinthine battlefield, is alive with danger. Rooftops glisten from recent rain, subway tunnels echo with distant footsteps, and neon signage reflects the chaos that is about to unfold. John's appearance is deliberate, his coat soaked, weapons holstered and loaded, and his gaze unyielding. Every movement is calculated, he surveys the streets, maps escape routes, and anticipates the presence of enemy operatives, fully aware that the entire assassin network could converge on him at any moment. The first New York encounter begins in an abandoned subway station, where John is ambushed by a squad of high-table enforcers. The fight is an intricate combination of firearms, melee combat, and environmental improvisation. John ducks behind support beams as gunfire ricochets off the walls, fires precise bursts to incapacitate attackers, and uses his momentum to sweep one adversary off a railing into a pool of water on the tracks. Each movement demonstrates his tactical intelligence. He uses the narrow space to funnel enemies, disarm them, and control the engagement. The cinematography enhances the intensity with long tracking shots that follow John's motion fluidly, giving the audience a visceral sense of his agility and the claustrophobic environment. Following this, John ascends to the rooftops, where a pursuit sequence begins against multiple assassins sent by de Graymont. Here, the choreography blends parkour, martial arts, and gun fu techniques. John leaps across buildings, slides under obstacles, and uses railings to swing into enemies, neutralizing them with precise strikes. At one point, he catches an adversary mid-leap, redirecting their momentum to slam them into a rooftop antenna. The fight sequences emphasize John's adaptability, showcasing his ability to integrate firearms, knives, and improvised environmental tools seamlessly. Akira reappears during this sequence, her blade flashing as she challenges John from above, testing his skill while hinting at her shifting loyalties. Their encounter is brief but impactful, reinforcing the theme that allies and enemies are often indistinguishable in this world. John then infiltrates de Greymont's headquarters, an opulent yet heavily secured building, symbolizing the High Table's wealth and control. The interior is labyrinthine, with multiple floors, staircases, and intricate layouts designed both for aesthetic opulence and security. John systematically takes out guards using a combination of stealth, firearms, and hand-to-hand combat. Each sequence is choreographed with meticulous attention to spatial awareness. He uses staircases to gain leverage, walls for momentum, and environmental objects as weapons. One sequence involves John using a chandelier to swing over a balcony railing, knocking multiple guards off balance while simultaneously firing at adversaries in the lower floor, a perfect example of environmental interaction integrated with tactical combat. The climax unfolds as John faces Marquis Vincent de Greymont in a grand confrontation. De Greymont, portrayed by Bill Skarsgård, exudes both menace and intelligence, commanding his environment and utilizing his enforcers strategically. The duel begins with a tense standoff, exchanging verbal barbs and testing each other's resolve. The combat is multifaceted. Firearms, swords, improvised weapons, and hand-to-hand combat are seamlessly integrated. John uses a combination of quick pistol shots, deflections, and rapid strikes to neutralize immediate threats while keeping his focus on de Greymont. De Greymont counters with precise attacks, exploiting the environment and attempting to trap John in narrow corridors and high-risk positions. At one point, de Greymont swings from a suspended railing, attempting to strike John with a weapon, but John anticipates the move and counters with a calculated elbow strike followed by a knee to the midsection, pushing de Greymont back and creating space. The battle escalates across multiple floors of the building, with John leveraging both vertical and horizontal spaces. He fires from elevated positions, slides down banisters into combat zones, and uses environmental hazards such as decorative pillars, hanging lights, and staircases to his advantage. Every move is calculated, reflecting his tactical brilliance and deep understanding of both offense and defense. The choreography emphasizes realism while maintaining cinematic flair, showing the physical toll on John. His movements are precise but increasingly strained, his injuries evident from previous encounters in Paris, Berlin, and Japan. Supporting characters influence the climax in subtle but critical ways. Winston, now operating from a distance, provides intelligence and support, helping John anticipate the movements of de Greymont's forces. Sharon, though limited due to Lance Reddick's posthumous presence, is honored symbolically, representing the loyalty and humanity that still exist within the assassin network. Minor assassins, some of whom John encountered in previous sequences, either reinforce de Greymont or betray him at critical moments, emphasizing the chaotic and unpredictable nature of alliances in the High Table's world. The duel reaches its peak in a visually stunning final set piece, where John and de Greymont face off in an expansive hall with multiple environmental hazards. The fight incorporates long-range gunfire, close-quarter strikes, and improvisation using surrounding objects. John dodges a heavy swing from de Greymont, counters with a rapid sequence of strikes to disable the Marquis's immediate support, and uses his pistol to create a distraction. He then closes the distance, engaging in hand-to-hand combat where every punch, kick, and maneuver is executed with lethal precision. Environmental interaction remains central. John uses a decorative column to pivot into a spinning kick, disarming de Greymont and setting up the final decisive strike. The narrative resolution comes with John's victory over de Greymont and the neutralization of key High Table operatives in New York. However, the film does not depict this as a simple triumph. The cost is heavy. John is physically battered, emotionally exhausted, and aware that freedom comes at the expense of continued isolation and the permanent consequences of his violent life. The aftermath sequences show John surveying the city from a rooftop, his injuries visible but his resolve unbroken. The High Table's influence is diminished, but the power structures remain, hinting at potential future conflicts. Emotional beats are interwoven with the action-heavy conclusion, including moments of reflection on fallen allies and the fleeting nature of alliances, reinforcing the themes of loyalty, sacrifice, and the inescapable consequences of a life defined by violence. The cinematography, choreography, and production design in these final sequences highlight the franchise's commitment to realism, stylistic excellence, and narrative coherence. Practical effects dominate, with minimal CGI, creating a tangible sense of danger and impact. Sound design amplifies the tension, gunfire echoes realistically, environmental sounds emphasize spatial awareness, and musical scoring heightens emotional resonance without overshadowing the action. Costume and prop design reflect both tactical functionality and character personality, further immersing viewers in John Wick's world. In the epilogue, John's journey reaches a contemplative conclusion. He survives, but not without lasting consequences. The film leaves certain narrative threads unresolved, maintaining ambiguity about his future while providing closure to the immediate conflict with de Greymont. It emphasizes that in John Wick's world, every victory carries cost, and every act of violence perpetuates a cycle that cannot be easily escaped. This bittersweet resolution balances spectacle with narrative depth, providing an emotionally resonant conclusion that is consistent with the franchise's themes and tone. Overall, the New York sequences and the ultimate showdown with Marquis Vincent de Greymont serve as the culmination of John's global journey. Every fight, environmental maneuver, and tactical decision reflects his mastery, experience, and relentless drive. The film's final act exemplifies the blend of stylistic brilliance, narrative complexity, and emotional weight that defines the franchise. It successfully ties together international arcs, character development, and thematic resonance, delivering a thrilling, visually stunning, and intellectually engaging conclusion to John Wick, Chapter 4. As John Wick's journey reaches its critical juncture, the tension and stakes escalate to their highest levels. The film's climax is not simply a series of action set pieces, it is the culmination of months of preparation, planning, and narrative layering that began in the earliest sequences. Each confrontation, chase, and skirmish carries narrative weight, reflecting Wick's long history of violence, loyalty, and personal code. The filmmakers skillfully intertwine narrative tension with kinetic action, ensuring that the audience experiences both the immediate danger of the fights and the long-term implications of Wick's choices. In the final sequences set across multiple international locations, including Paris and New York, the narrative emphasizes strategic thinking, improvisation, and adaptability. Wick is portrayed not merely as a fighter but as a tactician, using his environment, resources, and intelligence to confront overwhelming odds. The choreography, lighting, and cinematography all work in tandem to heighten suspense, immersing viewers in a visceral, almost tangible experience of danger and intensity. The emotional arcs of the characters are as significant as the physical action. John Wick, despite his reputation as a near-invincible assassin, is consistently portrayed as vulnerable, haunted by loss, betrayal, and the relentless demands of survival. Scenes depicting his interactions with allies, including characters portrayed by Lawrence Fishburne and Ian McShane, reveal a side of Wick rarely seen, contemplative, burdened by moral choices, and searching for meaning beyond the endless cycle of violence. These moments of introspection provide the audience with a deeper understanding of Wick's motivations, emphasizing that his quest for freedom is not merely physical but profoundly personal. Likewise, interactions with new characters, including Donnie Yen's and Rina Sawayama's characters, introduce both conflict and cooperation, demonstrating the delicate balance of trust and treachery in the assassin world. Each relationship is carefully crafted to reflect the overarching themes of loyalty, morality, and the cost of power. The climactic confrontations are particularly notable for their intricate choreography and cinematic presentation. The combination of long takes, rapid cuts, and dynamic camera movements ensures clarity while conveying intensity.